China, the world's most populous nation and world economic superpower. China's population has, on average, increased by over 25 people every minute, every day for the past 40 years. For a developing country such as China, with 22% of the world's population and only 7% of the world's arable land, rapid and persistent population growth can contribute significantly to the nation's poverty levels and restrain its potential for economic growth. China's one-child policy was first announced in 1979. In a 1979 speech, Deng Xiaoping drew the first outlines of a policy to limit population growth. The aim of China's one-child family policy was to help slow population growth to 1.2 billion by the year 2000. It was hoped that third and higher order births could be eliminated and that about 30% of couples might agree to not have a second child. It had been useful in the 1980s to protect many families from poverty. Government officials always said this policy is helpful for economic growth and they use this reason to cover the aging population problem. However, the one-child policy has many negative impacts, such as gender imbalance. According to the 5th National Census by the Chinese government in 2000, the male-to-female ratio is 130 to 100. Because of the one-child policy, a family can only have one child. Traditionally, Chinese people prefer boys over girls. The policy and the tradition together make many pregnant women have abortions and choose a boy to produce. In addition, high gender imbalance ratios will make a lot of serious social problems, such as rise of abandoned baby girls and males who cannot find a girlfriend or wife, causing the problem of sexual violence.
Welcome to the most miserable place in China for lovers. Here, where single men sit around all day, it seems, with nothing to do. You come across them everywhere, listless and hopeless. And to make things worse, the few women here hightail it out this economically depressed region as soon as they can.
Women leave to go far away to the cities to work. They don't come back. They marry men there and don't come back.
Chinese have a preference for boys, and that has produced a gender imbalance across the country. Here in Hainan, island-wide, there are 130 men for every 100 women, and in some places, the ratio is as bad as 170 to 100. Meet the 4 brothers of the Tian family. The eldest, 40, is Tian Jingqing. He's single. Next comes Tian Lingrong, 38, also single. Then Tian Rong, who is single at 29, and finally the youngest, Tian Huirong, 27, of course, single. They tell us they've all given up on finding a wife. In a country where there are more men vying for fewer women, they say they've got little to offer.
We are poor. I guess we can work harder. But finding a wife is even harder than making money.
So they've resigned themselves to a life of bachelorhood.
I'm 40. There's no wife for me. I just drink every day.
Their mother would nag her sons every so often. Her anxiety is not the exception in this village, but the rule. There are many families here, like the Tians.
Yes, I want grandchildren, but each day passes and nothing happens. I don't have that hope anymore.
This might be an extreme example of the male-female ratio problem, but to varying degrees, the frustrations of the villagers exist throughout China. And for those who engineered the single-child policy, the gender imbalance has been the worst unintended consequence. Because while families in the past might have just kept trying for a boy if their first child came out a daughter, the limitation has now meant only one chance to have that precious boy. Since the implementation of the single-child policy, the sex ratio in China, already bad, has gotten much worse. Abortions of girls abound. In order to prevent this, authorities have made it illegal for doctors to tell parents the sex of their child during ultrasound checkups. But as we found out, for about $20 it's easy to get an illegal ultrasound check. At this clinic, a man gives us the phone number of someone who, he says, can help. And this nurse here at a hospital says they can arrange an abortion with no questions asked. It'll just cost extra. Everywhere around Hainan are government messages to convince the public boys and girls are equal, echoing Chairman Mao Zedong when he said women hold up half the sky. But across the country today, many of the women are missing.
A few hours' drive away from the Xinyu steel factory, local family planning doctors are on the road.
这个计划生育政策嘛，也是通过根据我们国家的国情嘛，符合我们的国家国情。我觉得是非常好啊哈。不存在什么其他的松软，然后过年，然后。看一下，哪里不舒服啊？
One positive side effect of China's focus on population control has been a better health service for women and a reduction in the risks of death and injury associated with pregnancy. For 15 years, Dr. Wang has been making trips like this.
他就是服务群众嘛，为那个育龄群众服务啊，为提高人口素质啊，提高整个民族的素质，主要是一种这样的性质的服务工作。
In 2002, China outlawed the use of physical force to make a woman submit to an abortion or sterilisation. But some provinces demand abortions if the pregnancy violates local regulations. In this part of Jiangxi province, Yin Hongchuan is the district Communist Party chief. Here, there are unspecified remedial measures.
或者哪一条就按哪一条处理啊，你像有这个有多生的，或者超生的，或者早分的或者就这个基因弃婴的，还有什么不上房的，不接这个东西，这个哎呀很多，这个东西就是太多了，不好讲了。这个我们有条例，基本就按照条例，违反哪一条，就对哪一条进行处理就行了。
Penalties and punishment are highly sensitive issues. Despite his status, a local official saw fit to interrupt the interview.
我们国家有计划生育法律，这个人口计划生育法律是对世界公布的，就按照这个法律办事，其他的都不说了，好不好？关女孩就讲关。
China's one-child policy has given birth to an alarming imbalance between the sexes. Many couples have turned to ultrasound machines to guarantee they get the baby they want.
抬头的大小是还蛮发育还可以。
那其他方面呢？
其他胎心也还正常。
Cheap, small ultrasound machines have swept through even remote parts of the country. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of female fetuses have been aborted. A few years ago, in this very part of Jiangxi province, 142 boys were being born for every 100 girls. Since 1994, it's been illegal in China to reveal the sex of an unborn child. That's been easily bypassed with the help of red packets, bribes given over in red envelopes.
这个以前确实是有过，而且大家也，正如大家所知道的，众所周知的说，大家都有向医生提出性别鉴定，然后给予红包。我想这种行为是，在以前也许是大家认为是一种比较。 道义的行为吧，你给他帮忙，他给你红包。当然，我自己个人也面临着这种。
23-year-old Zhang Huihua would still like to know if she's having a boy or a girl.
现在就可以知道吗？当然想知道啊，能够提前知道自己宝宝的性别，那也
我觉得那也很不错，我可以给他提前取名字之类的呀。
The Chinese government is extremely sensitive to the hostility and division its population policy generates outside the country.
On the streets of Beijing, she looks like any other teenager. But in the eyes of the Chinese authorities, Li Xue doesn't exist. When her mom gave birth to her 19 years ago, what should have been a happy moment turned to sorrow. Li Xue was the second child of the family. Because her parents violated the one-child policy, her birth was never registered. When a person is born, he or she should be given a hukou, but she doesn't have one. She has no rights. A hukou, or documentation. For years now, Li Xue and her family have been appealing to authorities for the life-giving papers. I hope that one day when I have an identity, I'll be able to pass exams, get a degree, and have my own life. Because she was never registered, Li Xue never went to school, but her big sister did and taught her how to read and write. The family of 4 lives on $240 a month, so books have to be borrowed at the library using her sister's card. I feel it's quite unfair. It hurts not to have a normal life like other kids my age. She says when others complain about their homework, she only wishes she could exchange her life with them. I cry, but I don't do it in front of my parents, she says. Without the hukou, Li Xue cannot get a job, travel within China, let alone abroad. For her, getting married or even receiving treatment at the hospital is impossible. Her father says officials have told them only substantial bribes of thousands of dollars could solve their case, but the family can't afford to pay them.
It's impossible to know how many people like Li Xue there are in China today, but figures from 25 years ago show that at the time, 1 million children were born every year and never registered. And so a policy that was made to control population and punish the parents ended up punishing the innocent, the children.
Every year, around 30 million babies are born in China. As a result of China's one-child policy and its traditional preference for boys, hundreds of thousands of girls and disabled children are abandoned each year. Many abandoned infants die from exposure. Others are picked up by gangs and used for begging. The lucky ones go to Chinese orphanages. Underfunded and understaffed, the level of care in many of these orphanages are barely adequate.
While critics denounce China's family planning program as a violation of people's rights, an attack on the sanctity of the family, Chinese authorities hail it as a great success. Without the one-child policy, the country, they say, would have been in for a rough ride. China estimates it would have an extra 300 million people today, most condemned to lives of poverty and misery.
Everybody thinks of China as having had enormous economic growth, and they have. But you still have 600 million people in China living on under $2 a day.
China's population is still growing, and on present trends won't peak for another 25 years. Pragmatic, if not popular, China's one-child policy looks destined for a long life.